Everybody seems to be obsessed with reading novels, but I'm going to tell you why you should be reading poetry. It seems like everything on everybody's TBR lists are works of fiction. Novels, even short story collections, which are all great, and I definitely fall into this category as well. Novels are the majority of what I read. They're what I enjoy reading and tend to be what I enjoy talking about as well. But I think poetry is a really wonderful way to read and really expands your mind in ways that reading fiction, reading novels, reading short stories just isn't able to in the same way. The first reason why you should read poetry is because it slows you down. We all know that in this hyper-capitalistic world, we are moving incredibly fast, and everything that we do is fast-paced and at a speed that we really just shouldn't be operating at most of the time. Poems are really carefully crafted pieces of writing. They really necessitate that you slow down and not just read them, but they require a kind of rereading as well. How often when you're reading anything do you go back and reread what you've just read? How often do you think about the relationships between the words and the way that they are arranged? When we read poetry, we really have to think about these things because we're often encountering these words, this style, in a way that we are kind of unfamiliar or at least just not used to when we're reading poetry. While prose can be poetic, there can be poetic qualities to the things that we read. Poems really have a different way of attuning us to sound, rhyme, form. We're looking at not just the message that the words are trying to convey, but the way that those words are linked together and kind of form in relationship to one another. Poems are just written much more carefully and thoughtfully than prose. That's not to say that it's not to say that fiction isn't thoughtfully written. When you're writing prose, you don't have to think about the words in the same way. So in this very fast-paced world that values change and quickly moving on from things, not paying attention or staying and sitting with things, I think poetry is kind of an antidote to the sort of rushed feeling that we often feel like we have to embody as members of a capitalist society. In a similar vein, the second reason you should read poetry is because it helps you to see and I think quite literally hear the world in new ways. Because you're working with just an average of much less words than you are when you're writing in prose, poetry is extremely efficient in getting points and a narrative across in ways that prose can't. So in this way, it's deeply powerful in being able to change the way that you think and see the world. Perspectives are able to more easily be conveyed in a way, I think. Poetry is so powerful because it's able to explode a single moment and kind of make it come alive and bring us into it. We're able to almost make time stand still, and that's why I think it's really powerful. Poets are also paying attention to language in ways that we don't have time for in everyday life. So when we read poetry, we're able to actually look at our own language in a new way. How often are you able to actually do that in real life? It's kind of impossible. We just don't think about how our words are coming out in the same way that poets are toiling over their work and the ways that individual words are placed alongside each other. Poems often notice details in life and in the world that we often miss in our day-to-day lives. So reading poems, we can really learn about the world. We can experience it in a new way. And I think that's definitely worth doing in our lives. The third main reason why I would say that you should be reading poetry is because it's fun, it's enjoyable, and it's a beautiful art form to experience. And I think that's reason enough. I think more than any other medium that exists, poetry is obsessed with language and playing with it. And this is the art form. This is something really wonderful to experience, is this like attention to language and new words and learning about something that seems so banal, so normal. Like, we don't think about the words that we use on a day-to-day basis unless you are, a poet yourself, or you enjoy writing or things like that. Like, obviously there's lots of people who enjoy thinking about language, but I really think poets, people who are writing poems, are doing it in a different way, I think on a deeper level than even most writers. So even when poems are about really serious topics, even when they're not like just a happy like nature poem, which are enjoyable as well, poetry is really enjoyable in the way that it makes our mind feel different. And that's an enjoyable feeling, I think. If you enjoy reading of any kind, then you enjoy being in a different sort of world, a different sort of story. And poetry is doing the exact same thing. And I think anyone who enjoys reading novels would really enjoy reading poetry as well, because it's fun, it's great. So those are my main reasons why I think that you should be reading poetry. So it's all well and good to want to read poetry and to be convinced that it's a worthwhile endeavor. But it's a whole other thing to actually read it. So if you've never read poetry, or you're kind of unfamiliar with the form, there's a couple avenues that I would suggest kind of pursuing if you want to get a good introduction into poetry. The first avenue, I think, would be poem a day email lists. There's a few that I subscribe to. One from the Paris Review and another from Poetry. These are great because just every day you'll see a poem, and it's really easy to digest. It's just a single poem that you can read, and it's nice that it comes through in your email when you're getting like a lot of ads or work things coming through, and then you'll see a poem, and it's just like a really nice way to kind of pause and think about poetry and writing for a little bit. And these are usually often from accomplished poets, but sometimes from new contemporary poets. And it's really fun to get a range of like really, popular old poets as well as like new, younger contemporary writers. So not only is this a good way to sort of like engage in poetry on a daily basis, but it's also a really great way to find poets that you like. I've found a lot of poets that I've never heard of through these email lists. And that's why I really enjoy reading them, is because sometimes I'll just find a gem of a poem and I'm able to look into that poet, see what else they've written, see what other poems they have, their collections, learn about their life a little bit. And it's just a really great way to like very easily explore the genre of poetry. Another great way is through literary journals. There's the really popular ones like the Paris Review, the New Yorker, Yale Review, these like big journals that a lot of people have heard about or know of. But there's a lot of small journals out there that are doing really exciting and innovative work. A lot of these literary journals are attached to universities. So you could even look at the university or college that you went to, look at their literary journals. If you're a writer, you may have heard of this website, Chill Subs. And this is a great place where you can look at literary journals that you would want to submit to. But I would also say that if you're looking to find literary journals to read from, this would be a good place to pursue those journals as well. If you're looking for new places to read, or learn from, I would definitely suggest Chill Subs as a place to sort of explore a super wide variety of different literary journals. Another place to find great poems and great writing is through anthologies. Pick a period of time in history that really interests you. Maybe you're interested in Greek and Roman mythology, so you could pick out an anthology of Greek or Roman poems to read from. You could also, if you're interested in very contemporary work, you could look at the series that Poetry puts out of like best of 2020, whatever year you can look at, and they select poets and poems to put in those collections. Those are really excellent as well. You can really just go into any time period, any kind of like style of writing. Maybe you're interested in like women poets or trans poets, or maybe you're interested in like different communities, different backgrounds, and there's usually anthologies related to these different cross sections of writers. Anthologies are great because they pull from a wide variety of poets, so you're not just getting like one person's perspective, but you're getting a lot of different perspectives, and often there's some historical writing about the time period or the community that can be really helpful for helping to expand your knowledge about poets and poetry. So once you've found your poem, your poets, your anthology, your literary journal, now you're reading a poem. So how do you even do that? It can be really mystifying and a little bit intimidating at first, I think. But poetry, like I mentioned, necessitates reading and rereading. You're going to be sitting with this poem for a bit of time. Poetry collections and poems are very short, so you may think that you can kind of rush through it or read it quickly. But I would suggest really only reading a little bit at a time. Take a couple poems and read them, reread them. Look at the words that the poet is using. Think about it. Really sit with it and stay with it. So really my biggest piece of advice would be to go slowly when you're reading poetry, because then you'll be able to really understand and feel the meaning of the words. I could go into a whole other video about some of the ways you could analyze a poem, but for now I would just suggest annotating and like really becoming involved with the poem, being engaged with it, circling words that you don't know, words that you really like, or phrases that really stick out to you. When you are engaged with the poem, it becomes then a kind of relationship between you and the poem rather than just the poem, if that makes sense. Another way to learn about poetry and to read it, I would say, is actually to practice writing it yourself. Having a little poetry practice in your life can help you sort of think in the ways that poets think, because then you too can become a poet. And I think when you are thinking about writing poetry, then the way that you read it becomes different. You're not just reading it to analyze it, to understand, not just for the enjoyment, but also to learn from it as a poet. I would really suggest writing your own poetry, especially if you're reading things that are inspiring to you. Then you can write in that same literary genealogy and sort of become a part of it, which I think is a really powerful thing to do. Finally, I want to suggest a few collections of poets that you could start reading from. These are works that I just personally really enjoy, and as a teacher of poetry, I found that students really engage with these poets. So the first collection that I would recommend, and that holds a really dear place in my heart, is Tomas Tranströmer's selected works. And I read this in college. I read it in Sweden, on a study abroad. So basic, but yeah, I really enjoy this, not just because of the really positive memories that I have associated with it, but Trendstromer's poetry is really peaceful. It's observant. There's a kind of melancholy about it, but also a kind of like sweet joy. There's a deep engagement with the environment, and I just love this work. I also think it's really approachable. And reading poetry that's been translated, I think, I don't know, you just get like a different sense of language. It's a whole other thing I could get into, but yeah, I think this work of poetry, you know, these are selected works, so they weren't all like written together, but this is just a really great selection of poems. Okay, next I want to talk about a really fun collection. You can see this giant used sticker on this. Is not the most cute, but this is Tracy K. Smith's Life on Mars. This is such a fun collection of poems. It is like engaging with space and deep time. It's also obviously like a nod to David Bowie and pop culture, and there's like something really just like fun and playful, but also like really contemplative about these poems. They're so joyful, so rich, and yeah, I would recommend this collection to anybody. It's great for beginners or anyone who likes poetry. One anthology that I really love is American Hybrid. If you are kind of hesitant about like poetry forms and you don't really like traditional, really like strict ways of writing, this can be a really great anthology to pull from and learn about poets who kind of defy a lot of expectations about poetry. Maybe they are writing in prose, maybe they are like, you know, playing with form and language in ways that you might not see in like a literary magazine or something like that. They're really like explosive poets, and that's one reason why I really like this collection, and I might suggest it for people who aren't super familiar with poetry. It's a really fun and just really cool collection of learning like what a poem can even be. Elizabeth Bishop poems. These are also selected works from her. She's just like a rock star. She is just a rock star poet in my eyes. The way that she uses language, that she is like observing the world and making like commentaries about the world is really inspiring, and I think helps you see the world in new ways. I also think Elizabeth Bishop is just a really important poet to learn about. If you are interested in learning about poetry, then like there's a million poets that you should learn about. I think Elizabeth Bishop is definitely one of them. I've had really good success teaching a lot of her poems to students. So I'd recommend like either checking out this piece, but also just looking at her poems in general. My next collection is She Had Some Horses by Joy Harjo. Truly one of the most important writers of American history. Wow, like her work is so beautiful. It's just inventive. It's got so much life in it. It's making commentaries about the world, about politics in such elegant ways that you really have no choice but to listen to her poetry and to listen to her. She is thinking about the world, thinking about the environment, thinking about femininity, thinking about bodies in just really beautiful ways. And I really love this collection specifically, but all of her work is phenomenal. I think kind of operating in the same vein is Ada Limon's The Carrying. This is a really deep collection, but it's not unapproachable. And there are some really beautiful, poignant poems in here that are beautiful without being like overly mystifying, I think, to a new poetry reader. She's also just a really important poet working and writing right now, and I would really encourage you to read some of her work and just listen to what she has to say. She's making political commentaries. She has commentaries about grief, about life, about the environment, and I think she's just a really phenomenal poet working today who I really love. So that is why I think you should be reading poetry, and also how you can start reading poetry as well. What do you think about poetry? Like, what is the state of poetry right now? I feel like I truly only see people talking about prose, about fiction, even like best nonfiction. And I really just, maybe I'm not on the right side of the internet, but I don't see a ton of people talking about poetry. So do you like reading poetry? Is it something that you're interested in? What has been hard about like getting into it for you? And if you do like reading poetry, I would love to hear about some of your favorite poets or poems. Let me know what you like reading about poetry, and maybe also what you want to learn more about in regards to poetry. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.